bit of a conundrum coming my way at the end of the year, because I thought Logan was going to be secure in its #1 spot as my favorite movie of 2017. I thought no matter what else comes out this year, nothing's going to topple Logan from that high point. It's on treacherous ground right now. I've got to suss out which one of these I feel is more #1 spot worthy, Logan or Blade Runner 2049. Because as much as I had a very enjoyable and very emotional time watching Logan, I love Blade Runner, and this is a very, very well put together and well executed sequel and follow-up for that. I have been kind of a Blade Runner fan since, I want to say, 16 or 17 when I first saw the film and was able to kind of take it in properly. I may have seen it in passing when I was younger, if it was ever on like TV or something like that, but for the first time I actually like sat down and watched it all the way through and actually retained it was when I was in my teens. Immediately there was just something about not just the production of it, but about the story and the world that it created that really stuck with me throughout the years. I was really appreciative. That was the first Harrison Ford role I'd seen in which he was kind of just a total dick. I mean, a lot of his characters are dicks, but they're likable on other levels. Like Han Solo is, you know, an asshole to be sure, but he's a very charming and, you know, the scoundrel, as Leia calls him, you know, a rogue of some kind. So he's got very charming qualities about him. Indiana Jones, very similar, straightforward good guy, even though he's a little rough around the edges. Deckard from Blade Runner is, through and through for me, just a very by-the-numbers kind of grizzled noir detective type. But there is some charm there, but it's not a very appealing charm. And you can see that throughout the performances that he's going for that. Like, maybe it had to do with the fact that Harrison Ford thought that initial shoot was a nightmare to be in, and he wasn't having a good time on that set. Maybe that's coming through in his performance in that original film, but I feel that's very integral to kind of the character and his arc throughout the story. Is he's burnt out. He's kind of just going through the motions of his job and has zero to little empathy for his targets and just for people in general. Like, again, maybe it has to do with the fact that he and Sean Young didn't have the best off-screen relationship probably going on that shoot, but you can tell in their interactions that he's just like walled up against any person getting close to him, and it makes him, well, still kind of an interesting protagonist that doesn't make him likable for me. But I enjoy that about it, because it's like, oh wow, it's the first time I've seen Harrison Ford in a thoroughly unlikable kind of hero role, as it were. I'm still rooting for him, but man, this dude could crack a smile every once in a while. I don't know, I was getting kind of Fury Road flashbacks at this screening, because I went into this morning, or this matinee screening, and it wasn't a ghost town, but there were definite, you know, gaps in the seating chart, as it were. Meanwhile, across the way in the other hallway of this AMC, there's a line of families and kids up around the hallway waiting for the My Little Pony movie, I guess, is coming out as well. Oh my god, please don't let Blade Runner 2049 take second place to the My Little Pony movie this weekend, people. Maybe My Little Pony is great and all, its new iteration or whatever. Maybe it's a great family film and yeah, sure, families would enjoy it, but this happened to Blade Runner already. It lost to the feel-good movie of that opening weekend, E.T., back in 1982. Don't let it lose here to My Little Pony of all things, because this is very much a thoroughly entertaining movie that treats you like an adult, treats the audience member with some degree of intelligence and respect. The thing about Blade Runner, I've always felt, is that people feel a need to very much overcomplicate the themes and the characters within it, more so than they should. For me, Blade Runner's themes have never been so intricate or complex or beyond the scope of kind of our comprehension. It's pretty straightforward with the story it's trying to tell, but it's just delivered to you in such an avant-garde and unconventional way of filmmaking that you feel like it is a little bit more, let's say, mentally resonating with you than other films of its ilk. And that is the miracle of filmmaking, is how it tricks you into kind of expecting more from something that's really just giving you something you've seen before, but it's doing it in a very interesting and fun way. I'm not going to give you spoilers in this review because I feel for the best viewing experience, you honestly have to maybe kind of brush up on the original before going in, and then just go in cold without having read any of the reviews, having read any potential spoilers. I tried to avoid all the trailers for this as much as I could. It's really hard when your rollover ads on your YouTube videos are like 30-second spots for the movie. But plot-wise, I kind of kept my distance from certain articles or certain spoilers discussing characters or plot elements in this film. And I'm so glad I did, because I was thoroughly hooked into everything that was taking place, not just in the story, but what was going on with further building the world of Los Angeles in the mid-21st century. Everyone, I feel, does a really good job with what they have to do in this movie. Ryan Gosling, you know, some people, when he gets into these types of very stoic and soft-spoken type of characters, they feel like it's just kind of wooden acting. It was very suitable for this particular role and this particular story. At no point did I feel like anyone was sleepwalking through their role. Everyone finds some legitimate thing to anchor them into investing in their character in this story. Honestly, if there was some kind of emotional detachment in Blade Runner, it would make sense, because this is a story about artificial life forms realizing their own kind of purpose or direction, or to a lesser extent the idea of like having them resonate with some kind of soul. So it makes sense that there would be maybe some kind of off-balance performances in the original and even in this film. Just to give you a little bit of a setup without giving too much away, replicants have been integrated into functioning society. They're not seen so much as outliers. The older models are still being hunted because they're unpredictable, but for the most part, newer generations of replicants have become subservient to humans. They are very compliant and are docile for the most part. And not only that, but artificial intelligence that doesn't take on a humanoid form in physical representation, at least, is abundant here. One of Gosling's, one of the side characters is his quote-unquote love interest, who's his AI, which is bringing me back like flashbacks of her. Like basically, if her went the next level and was able to have like a physical digital representation of themselves wandering around, that would be this. I knew I was gonna enjoy this film because it starts off with a scene that's mentioned quite a bit in documentaries about Blade Runner, like Dangerous Days, where they were talking about how are we gonna open up the original film, and there was a scene that was conceived to kind of open up the original film that's used as the opening for this film. And it makes sense because Hampton Fancher is all over this script and screenplay, so Hampton, congratulations, buddy. You got your soup boiling in a pot scene. Good on you. Everything from the style, the scope of the film, the music, which I don't believe Vangelis had much to do with this film, aside from they were just borrowing the motifs he had established in the original. But it feels like a solid continuation of all the music he had established for 1982's Blade Runner. Like I said, the environment is just as bleak and just as dilapidated as it was in the original, if not more kind of isolated. At first it was kind of weird because I remember just in Ridley Scott's movie, the streets of Los Angeles just being populated to the max by people crowded together with their glowing umbrellas and eating noodles out of a noodle stand in the pouring rain, and all the smog and filth and toxic waste and stuff all over the place, and the world is being like populated by spinner cars. At first it was a little weird to see that suddenly get kind of reined in a little bit. There's not so much like skyway traffic going on in this world as there was before. Some of the ground level scenes are very kind of isolating, and you only see like Gosling and one or two other people walking the streets at time, and either what's snowfall or pure ash. But it makes sense because the world has gone to even more shit in the 30 years that have taken place since the events of Blade Runner. Everything within the frame serves to legitimize the world even more so than its predecessor. And God bless Harrison Ford, because this is the role recently that I feel he's giving so much of a shit in. Like, he is really investing hard in Deckard, which is weird because, you know, again, going back to behind the scenes stories that you've heard, it wasn't a fun experience for him shooting the first one. Don't get me wrong, I love me modern Harrison Ford stuff. He did a fantastic kind of send-off to Han Solo in The Force Awakens. Spoilers for those of you who have still yet to watch The Force Awakens, I'm sorry. But Deckard, he actually kind of brought him to a different place and still stayed true to the character he had established before. Like I said, Deckard is kind of unlikable throughout a majority of the first film. Here, though, after he's kind of gained a 30-year perspective, and when you find out what has been entailed in those 30 years with regards to him, with regards to his outlook on replicants, with regards to his relationship with Rachel, it makes sense that this is where Deckard would be now. And he sells it. He has a pretty convincing face-to-face with Jared Leto, another actor who's utilized pretty well in his minimum of screen time. He reaches sort of a very emotional breaking point, and you buy it. You buy that, oh, he is so close to just giving in at this point, but he won't. Perfect. Like, that's how you want to utilize Harrison Ford. You don't want Harrison Ford so self-aware that he's just smarming at everything that's taking place in the scene, and you don't want him bored off of his ass to the point where he's thoroughly miserable. I don't know how much I can really say going forward into this for you, because I really want you to go watch this movie. I feel if you didn't even see the original, you would still get something of merit out of this viewing, because it doesn't hold your hand necessarily with its plot or what it's trying to get across to you, but it does allow for sort of a primer at the beginning of what to expect. I was thinking while watching this movie, even as if I was a novice going in with zero to no knowledge of Blade Runner, that I'd still be able to kind of discern what's going on. And there are some truly like spellbinding scenes in this movie. There's some great set design, as I was expecting, but there's also just great, almost hypnotic sequences. There is a love scene in this movie that at first gets a little weird, but then gets cool and trippy. That you're just like, whoa. How? Like, I know it's CGI trickery, but it's really well done. There is CGI puppetry at one point in this movie that I think it was CGI puppetry, or they just got a really good look-alike for somebody, because it is convincing. It's not the Grand Moff Tarkin or Princess Leia from Rogue One stuff. It's not Charles Xavier and Magneto from X-Men The Last Stand in the 80s. It's almost as if they got somebody from the original film and just plucked them out of that movie and put them in this movie. I can't tell where the seams are on this trick. That might have already given away a spoiler, maybe. I don't know. But I'm really... mum's the word. I can't say any more. This is worth your time. It is a longer film, but I didn't feel the length at all, because I was thoroughly invested in every twist and turn that this mystery was taking. I really was digging the way they expanded on this environment, the way they expanded on, you know, what life is like for Ryan Gosling's Officer K. You know, when Harrison Ford does show up in the movie, he's not what the advertisements are kind of saying he is, where he's like teamed up with Ryan Gosling for a good chunk of the film. No, he makes his appearance pretty late in the movie. It doesn't feel too out of place. It doesn't feel like fan service. So by all means, if you were a fan of the original and you want to give this one all the love and support you couldn't back in 1982, because like me, you probably weren't born yet, go watch this in the theater. It's a sight to behold on the big screen, that's for sure. If you can see an IMAX screening of this, I highly recommend that. The scope, even though it is a very bleak and very dreary looking type of film, there are moments and scenes and cityscapes that really pop with neon and things like that. It took me back to my love for Blade Runner almost immediately, and took me back to the fascination of the movie that I had so much that even before my McG TV days, I'm not embarrassed to say it, I did a Blade Runner fan film, or a fake Blade Runner trailer, in which there were certain themes within it that I kind of was smiling a little bit to see carried over into this movie. There was stuff that I tried tech-wise with green screens and blue screens that aren't really groundbreaking by today's standards, but at the time I was like, I feel so much like Ridley Scott right now. And that's what I was thinking to myself while watching this movie. It's like, oh man, Denis Villeneuve, you are the artist who has the scope and eye for this type of spectacle and this type of theme and story. Man, I don't know. Logan, your time on the #1 spot might be very, very short. I'm sorry, I still love you. You'll be a great #2 maybe. I don't know. Stay tuned for my best and worst of 2017 in a couple of months, and you'll see which one won out. Blade Runner 2049 or Logan. In the meantime, go watch Blade Runner 2049. Please don't let My Little Pony drown it in the box office.